Talks at St Giles. Today we've got one of my old friends, Robert Wright, and Fleur Dorrell coming to talk about a painting which I believe they've had a conversation about this painting somewhere else, in another place, which is involved in a different activity at the moment. Is that right? But I'm delighted Robert is here, and thank you, Fleur, for coming to be part of this as well. I'll let them introduce the subject themselves.
Hello, thank you all for coming. It's good to be with you again. We begin with the prayer. It was out of love that God gave us his only Son. It was out of love that Christ laid down his life for us. It was out of love that Christ called us to him. It was out of love that Jesus came quietly from the tomb. Jesus is this love. Amen. I'm Robert Wright. I live in Headington, and I'm an artist. I've been painting for about 25 years, probably, and you'll be hearing about that in a moment more.
And I'm Fleur Dorrell. I'm Catholic Scripture Engagement Manager for the Bible Society and for the Catholic Bishops' Conference. And I own a number of Robert's paintings, and I absolutely love them because then I can live with them about my day-to-day business. I find that they have a real power to transform both me, spiritually, physically, and my house in which they are hanging. With Robert's paintings, we will find, as we will with this one, you have real encounters of grace. You have a deep relationship with God through these paintings, and that is what we are going to create today, that encounter of grace.
Thank you. So an artist encounters the cross, and it begins with a blank canvas, if you'll allow that as a blank canvas. Where on earth do you begin? And it would be interesting to know what is rushing through your minds as I ask that question. We're well used to simple crosses, we're well used to those very graphic Spanish paintings of crucifixions. But I come at this as an abstract artist. And so in that first painting, mine on your left, Jesus carries his own cross. I've tried to, that's a little bit more representational, isn't it? With a sense of the timber of the cross. There's a sense of a journey. You go through red, it's suggesting passion perhaps, and then a hint of glory in the top. This one, courteous love, is an interesting clash of colours. In that the orangey red, the vibrant red, is talking to that crushed mulberry, I suppose we'd say, all held against a gold, glorious background. Over here, the hell of contemplation, the small one in the second arch. There you have a small cross, worth looking at a bit closer to get an image of the as in contemplation, everything stripped away as you go into the silence. So all those, the dogma that surrounds our faith is taken away, and like when a child takes its first step, and you don't know if the child's going to fall over. But there, in the midst of that, is hanging that cross, and there's a lot going on in that cross. And then the next one to it, from darkness to light, where the cross stands out firmly as a liminal space, waiting to move from the darkness into the light on the right-hand side. And today's painting, so we've got this blank canvas, quite scary in a way, big white sheet. What on earth are you going to do with it? Where do you start? I've suggested some of the ways you might start. Thinking about the Passion and the 7 last words, this is the painting we're going to be thinking about today. So what I would suggest you do is, for a few moments, you look at that painting and the 7 last words, and you ask yourselves, when you these paintings require attention, they do require time. Some of us may just walk past them, and some of them may spend time. I think to enter into a conversation with them, they do require time and a response. So perhaps you could ask yourselves, what were you drawn to immediately in it? Where are your eyes? Where is your heart drawn in that? And which colours and shapes does your soul respond to? I'd like us just to have a couple of minutes, just in silence, just thinking about that question. What draws you in the painting? Where are your eyes drawn? Where's your heart drawn? And which colours and which shapes does your soul or inner being respond to? And after a couple of minutes, we think it'd be good just to have a little conversation amongst yourselves about that. This particular bit attracted me. I didn't understand why. I hate that. I love that. Just so that you can begin to express that. If you want to sit in silence and not say anything, please do, and none of us will judge you if you're saying, no thank you, I'm just going to sit with the painting. So just a couple of minutes silence, and then we can have a little conversation amongst ourselves. So if you're comfortable with sharing with someone, do for a few moments. If you'd rather just sit in silence, that's absolutely fine.
So I'm just going to hand out this little leaflet which has got a picture in it, and it's got an explanation of the biblical 7 sayings. I'm going to talk about that now. Just check that you all got one first. I've got some more here if you run out. So we thought it would be helpful to give a very brief biblical context to which this painting has arisen. And it's very interesting with the 7 last sayings of Jesus, or as in this painting they're the 7 last words. But theologians and musicians and artists have pored over these 7 last sayings of Jesus for a very long time. They've inspired all sorts of ideas about why Jesus said what he said, what did he mean when he said what he said, and why the different gospel writers report different sayings. So I did a handy little chart inside, and what you see is that Matthew and Mark only report one of these 7 sayings. And the saying that Matthew and Mark report, my God, why have you forsaken me?" They also report that Jesus said it in a very loud voice. But the other gospel writers, Luke and John, both have 3 sayings that they report Jesus said, and there is no differentiation of tone in which Jesus says them. There's all sorts of interesting ideas about that, but maybe that's for you to ponder in your Lenten journey. But why these 7 sayings, and why have they now also been given 7 deeper meanings to frame them? So everything from forgiveness to salvation to reunion to distress itself and thirst, but thirst, when Jesus thirsts, it's not just a physical thirst, it's a spiritual thirst, and it's a thirst that we are invited to join in, a thirst for scriptures to be fulfilled through Christ's death. So the meaning and the layer of the meaning and the journey that these sayings take Jesus on is core to the Gospels, because that is how he then dies and is able to rise again. And we are invited to be part of that journey. So Robert's painting is a very interesting analysis of those sayings, and we're now going to get Robert to talk a bit about how those 7 Bible phrases have come to be the way he has now expressed them on this canvas. So Robert, please tell us how you went about the journey from the Bible texts to your painting.
In St. John's first letter, we read, "This is the love I mean, not our love for God, but God's love for us, when he sent his Son to be the sacrifice that takes our sins away." The artist Miro once said that amidst the silence of others, the artist uses their voice to say something and has an obligation that this thing is not useless, but something that offers a service to humanity. So the question confronting me as I painted this in 2005, I was at Westminster Abbey, and we were having an evening with the Endelian String Quartet playing Haydn's 7 Last Words, and Andrew Motion was reading some of his work, and this stood in the nave, the only thing apart from the Tomb of the Unknown Warrior in the nave. It was beautifully lit. And so I was trying to say something in, well, it might be better to be saying it at the moment in Westminster, mightn't it? It wasn't quite as hectic at that time. I don't think we'd even had the expenses scandal then, but nevertheless it's a fairly wild place to be, and I was trying to speak of the cross and the passion into that situation. And the artist Mark Rothko said that he never thought that painting a picture has anything to do with self-expression. It's a communication about the world to someone else, and is as such an act of communication. And that's how the painting gains its value by that communication. So whereas the representational artist is trying to imitate the appearance of things, although I would actually say that most painting is abstracted to a greater or lesser extent, abstract artists are more concerned with the hidden relationship between things. It's for you, the viewer, to create meanings, not for the artist to dictate them. So I'm not trying to dictate something to you. I'm trying to open up a conversation. I'm trying to help the viewer to see something in that painting. And in this, abstract art gives the viewer an unprecedented freedom of imaginative response. You can allow yourself, if you will, to let your mind, let your heart, let your soul ramble, wander around the painting. So it invites a unique encounter between the viewer and the painting. And I, of course, because my paintings come out of my faith, I would say between the viewer, the painting, and God. And abstract art has many ways of connecting with our world, but it's not literal or unequivocal. It always demands, or invites, perhaps we should say, an inspired and visionary response. So the question confronting me as an abstract artist is, what do I have to say in these paintings? In a way, if you looked at the paintings I have in this exhibition, you might already begin to answer that for yourselves. Clearly, I'm not wanting to produce graphic, blood-stained images of imperial Rome's violent suppression of its subject peoples. In this case, what Nietzsche called that ghastly paradox of a God on the cross. Nor am I, as I said, trying to tell you what to think. Rather, they're an invitation to join a journey of inquiry. And that painting again, Jesus carries his cross, I think suggests something of that journey. It's taking you on somewhere. Society values knowledge. I think this is a very important point. Since early childhood, we are encouraged to know things. There will be tests and exams to test that we have done that. An understatement in this great university city. It is a positive thing to know things. But the artist, and I would say the contemplative as well, values unknowing, representing sometimes a lack or an absence. You might even suggest, not you, it might even be suggested an inadequacy that needs to be overcome. But for the abstract artist, I want to say as well for the contemplative, not knowing is a liminal space, where not knowing is not only not overcome, but is actually sought, explored, and indeed valued. So, we are, in this painting, we are allowing ourselves to enter into a place of not knowing, waiting for an insight into the 7 last words of Jesus on the cross. It's not forcefully telling us things, it's inviting us to wait in that space, that liminal space, to explore, to allow what is going to happen. It's terribly easy, isn't it, when confronted with an abstract painting, to say, what does it mean? But part of what the abstract artist is seeking to explore lies beyond that. It lies in remaining open to the strange in its strangeness, being prepared to lose ourselves in the encounter, not knowing, risking not knowing as the condition of a possible transformation. It's worth reminding ourselves of the unprecedented, scandalous, even insane understanding of love that Christ's life, death on the cross and resurrection inaugurated, and which transformed the Old Testament ahav and the Greek eros into agape, Christian love, and which sadly becomes watered down through the Latin caritas into the English charity, which somehow softened that and watered down the meaning of it, of this insane love that we're talking about. As Christians, we're assured of God's love independently of our merits, rather than having to earn that love, or to be fearful that God might withdraw his love from us. So as I reflected on agape love, I am considering the benevolent generosity of such a gift, love. But a love which is accomplished by means of a death that's temporary, yes, and leads to resurrection, but is nevertheless scandalous, even insane. So I'm asking us interior questions about this love, and that I think is where the colour comes from. It's trying to reflect on this generous, gracious gift love that is God's, not to dwell on the darkness and the horror. What was that film we saw?
Oh, The Gospel of Us.
The Gospel of Us. I don't know if you've seen that. It's about the Welsh town
Port Talbot.
Port Talbot, and it's a fantastic film. But the crucifixion scene in that is just horrendous, but very, very real. And I've been trying to move away from that to a sense of God's this gracious love, this free gift of love, this exciting love, this generous love, and I think that's where a lot of the brightness in the painting comes from. I'm not seeking to ignore the barbarity and horror and scandal of the cross, but I have been inspired by that hymn, "In the cross of Christ I glory," and how can we represent that? In the cross of Christ I glory. And I've been seeking to wait on God in that liminal place of beauty, costly, sacrificial love. So, you see the gold at the top of that cross, you see the gold supporting that cross, all suggesting this generous love. The subtle majesty of that cross is held in the gold. And the ethereal beauty of seeing that. And I hope, despite the fact that in one sense it's all over the place, it is balanced. There is a sense of it being balanced. And I was saying to Fleur that for me this silver rim to the painting was really important for me, as it was a sense of being held in God's love despite the horror and the confusion and the complexity of the 7 last words, the Passion of Christ. It took a long time to get to this painting. We were on holiday and it went through about 10 iterations as I tried to work out how I could represent this. And there were times when I panicked, but eventually this is what came out. As we enter into this discourse with Christ's passion, perhaps we shall find that there is no limit to the ability of God's love to sustain and transform us through periods of disintegration and crisis. As St. Paul says in the letter to the Romans, if in union with Christ we've imitated his death, we shall also imitate him in his resurrection. But it's your encounter with the painting that will determine your experience and the success of the painting. And in this digital age of computers, mobile phones, televisions, an unprecedented time of rapid images, when the brain is having to make new neural pathways to deal with all this information, these paintings, this painting in particular, offers us, our brains, space to be contemplative, to be, and therefore, I would say, immensely powerful and significant. Because the great power of abstract painting is its authority, seeming, as I've said, to reference everything and nothing at the same time, in the interaction that takes place between expressive potentials in the paintings and latent memories in your mind. So it is an intention to encourage involvement and imagination, providing you with an intangible and an emotional experience, often completely different because we will all see different things in the painting. We will come with it with our own background, our own personality, our own state of mind. So it's really up to you to decide whether the painting in front of you, the 7 last words, has any meaning or provokes any emotion. In one sense, the abstract painter doesn't mind if you say, load of rubbish, don't understand it. You've noticed it, rather than just walking by. I was in an exhibition of Rothko's work once in black and white paintings in Basel, and I spent the day in the gallery, and it was interesting. Some people just walked in and said, oh dear, and walked straight out, and other people spent time with them. That's what the artist wants, is for you to spend some time to engage, and as I say, maybe like, not like, maybe understand, not understand, maybe transformed, maybe not transformed in the experience. And I hope that, like an icon, this painting will draw us into its own narrative, which is the life of God among us now.
Thank you, Robert. That was a pretty rich journey we have been privileged to be on with him. So I'm going to ask Robert some questions now, and then after that, it'd be good if you can ask us some questions too. But I would like us to delve a bit deeper into what he's been saying. So Robert, you mentioned all sorts of interesting words. You mentioned letting your mind wander, a journey of inquiry, going into the unknown. You used words like transformation, liminality, the desire to explore, the conflict and the paradox that we often face. So if it's this mental and spiritual journey that you take us on, how do we know when we've arrived? How do you know when you've arrived as an artist with your painting, when you've reached your destination? Or does that not matter?
It's a very pertinent question, one that's often asked, how do you know when to stop? And it isn't easy, because there are always things that you can adjust, and there's a painting actually hanging in your bedroom, which here, where you're staying with us, which is also my studio when you're not here. And when I painted that, I found it really fearsome, and there was an extraordinary, it was almost terrifying, and I needed to soften it a bit. So I worked quite a lot at that, and I think it's still a powerful painting, but it's not quite as direct in your face as it was, I would say. So sometimes you keep on, other times you don't. And for me, actually, most of the time I know where I'm going with the painting. So I get a title, and I think and pray about it, and then it explodes onto the canvas. I pretty well knew with this where everything would be on it before I started it. But I would really say that a painting actually is completed by the conversation, by the discussion that comes from the painting. Have we got time? Yes, I was saying last night that I had an exhibition in Hereford with 2 other artists, and someone at the end of it came to me and she said, have you painted any of these? And I said, yes, the abstract paintings. Oh, I don't understand abstract art, she said. And I said, well, let's go and have a look at the painting. And it was orange and black stripes with a little bit of gold and pink in it, which I think Fleur's going to come to. She said, why did you write it from right to left? Which rang bells in my mind, because icons are written, and Hebrew is written from right to left. I'd never seen the painting in that way. It was very much a journey from your left to right. She was seeing from your right to left. And we had a very interesting discussion about that, and within no time at all, we were discussing her own spiritual journey. And when we had 3/4 of an hour talking about this, and I'm sure you're going to ask me about that little bit up there. Later. And there was something like that in the painting. Why did you put that there? She said. Pink in that case. So it's arrived when it's starting to communicate.
And the conversation continues.
It's a conversation.
So one of the things I love about Robert's paintings is that they do take you into them and into yourself, your very being, but they then also take you on a journey. And once you're on that journey, I find it, addictive would be the wrong word, but I find it very compelling. I can't not be on that journey because that journey is a journey with God. It's that encounter with grace that I said at the beginning. And when you're in that encounter, in that creative space, words, as we know, can be woefully inadequate, but abstract art can give you a language which you can't convey in other ways. And that, for me, is why I love abstract art rather than finding it threatening or difficult. I like the fact that it challenges us with a new language. And it gives us a permission, as Robert said right at the beginning, he doesn't dictate what we should think when we look at his paintings. He gives us permission to have our own journey. And that's very powerful. Now, there's another thing you mentioned quite a lot, was the word liminal, which is a very good word. When I think about the word liminal in the context of Lent, of the cross, of the Passion narratives, I think of it as the betwixt and between, mostly on Holy Saturday, when the world is suspended. But I'd like you to talk to us a bit more about what liminal means to you, from your experience, both in terms of how you pray when you paint, and how you actually paint. How do you understand the liminal in your own techniques and in your own faith?
I think it goes back to the white canvas and having that and thinking, where do I start? And as I said, for me, it would probably start. A lot of my painting would come out of the writings of Thomas Merton. So I would think I would find a phrase, all or nothing, say, and think and pray about that for a time. And gradually that would form into a painting, and I would, as I say, know where I'm going. So the liminal space is that place of transition, waiting, not knowing, and being there, but allowing the possibility of transformation. And if we wait in that space, letting it form us, really. So, where does that happen in my life? I think this journey into contemplative prayer has been very much like that. As I said in this painting over here, the hell of contemplation. It's about, as we go into that place of nothingness, that place of silence, if that's where God has invited us, where God wants to meet us. So much is stripped away, so a lot of the teaching is stripped away. You may find yourself rarely going to Scripture as you enter into that silence with God. So it will be different for everyone, but these familiar points are taken away. As I said, it's like a child learning to walk, and you step back. God steps back from us and lets us try that. So it's like that. Being open to God in that. I think for me, this morning, for instance, it was seeing two red kites up at Shotover as I was walking our dog in the field over there. There were two kites just drifting around in the heavens, so to speak, and that is a liminal space for me. I'm thinking of God's glory, God's grandeur, God's mystery in all of that. And I hope that's reflected in the paintings.
Thank you. And you mentioned about the act of contemplation. When we truly contemplate, we actually identify with the thing that we are contemplating. So whether we're contemplating silence, we will identify with the silence. The silence becomes part of us. So when we contemplate on a painting like this, which is not representation, it's abstract, we are invited with time and with discipline and rigour, which is what we said at the beginning, you need time to engage with abstract art. We identify with Jesus' 7 last words. so we become not literally one with Christ necessarily, but we identify with what he is doing in that liminal space. And that is why these paintings are so devotional and meditational, because we are absorbed into that encounter with Christ, which is a very good way of understanding our Lenten journey. So another question, Robert. You've called the painting Seven Last Words, and we've understood a bit about the biblical context. And I see 7 shapes in the painting. Now that might just be me, it might just be part of my brain that likes to have some sort of order occasionally, but is the 7 shapes that I see that I think you painted actually the 7 last words, or has that just got nothing to do with it and you've gone about it in quite a different way?
I think it's got everything to do with it. I'm not going to tell you which is which, but I think we can ask ourselves, if we were trying to do this, how would we, if you look on the purple side of this, think of those 7 last words in the middle section in the bold: forgiveness, salvation, relationship, abandonment, distress, triumph, reunion. How would we begin to express that? How could we possibly begin to do it? So, Father, forgive them. Where would you begin to, how would you begin to express that? So that was in my mind as I was doing this. I had originally thought of, there was one with circles in it, there was another with just building up like a graph really. That was another idea, but gradually I came round to this, trying to say something of those mysteries. It is finished. Well, triumph. It'd be interesting to see if we voted which of those expresses that.
Yeah, I think that we could all look at that in a bit. But there's another interesting thing about, okay, so consciously or unconsciously, those shapes represent the 7 last words, but we decide ourselves which one represents which. But one of the other things that's interesting is that the red cross is a very dominant red, but it's also got a very dominant black going through it. And then you can start to think, well, maybe one bit does draw me and is more powerful than another. But then you go to another shape in another space, and suddenly you're drawn into that. So there is, in that sense, a real equilibrium in this painting. And going back to something you said much earlier about the film you saw about how you depict the crucifixion across the Passion. I don't feel, because I love the colours in this painting and that they have an energy and a dynamism, that they are glamorising what she's going through. Even though aesthetically I find them very attractive. What I find is that they tell me to dig deep down and they challenge me, and I personally like to be challenged by art, particularly when it is related to my faith and my spirituality. So I would like to know one thing within the red section. This tiny piece of gold on that tip is something that I keep coming back to, and I find it really, really exciting, because I don't know what it means to me yet, but I am drawn to it, and I'd like to know whether, when you did that, was that early on or was that late, and does it mean anything for you, that tiny bit of gold, all of that deep, powerful red?
Yes, it does mean something.
Good.
I think in those, there is obviously a reference to the cross, isn't there, in the red and the black.
You tell us.
Well, I don't think you could avoid that, could you? Could you all see that?
Yes.
There is a reference to the cross there. And well, I think that's a glimmer of hope, that little gold bit. My God, why have you forsaken me? I think that's what the red was for me. You got me to tell you something which I wasn't going to tell you. But I think that it is a glimmer of hope in that, and faith. And so we could elaborate on that, couldn't we? About faith and how faith. It's difficult to hold faith in a really ghastly situation. If we were Syrian Christians driven out of Syria, would we actually be able to hang on to that little bit of faith, or would we be stuck in that red ghastliness?
I also think there's hope in the silver around the edge, because if it was just a solid grey, there wouldn't be a change. But because the solid grey changes to silver around the edge, that means there's a movement. And that is also true of Jesus' 7 last words, because they become something else, primarily in the hope of the resurrection. So I think it's time that we asked you to ask us some questions now, and perhaps we could just have 2 or 3 questions in the time we've got from people who may want to challenge Robert in particular. Yes.